presumptive Democratic nominee blames the conservative media for attacks on his wife, Michelle. Obama tells Glamour magazine his wife and John McCain's wife, Cindy, are not fair game because essentially they're civilians. He says his wife is the quintessential American woman who's honest, smart, and funny. Senator McCain agrees with Obama, recently telling CNN both spouses should be treated with respect. Make sure you check out our political ticker for all the latest campaign news. Just log on to cnnpolitics.com.
Criticism of his wife. He responded. Quote, "It's infuriating, but it's not surprising because let's face it, what happened was that the conservative press, Fox News and the National Review and columnists of every ilk went fairly deliberately at her in a pretty systematic way and treated her as the candidate in a way that you just rarely see the Democrats try to do against Republicans. And I've said this before, I would never have my campaign engage in a concerted effort to make Cindy McCain an issue, and I would not expect the Democratic National Committee or people who are allied with me to do this, because essentially spouses are civilians. They didn't sign up for this. They're supporting their spouse, so it took a toll. If you start being subjected to rants by Sean Hannity and the like, day in and day out, that'll drive up your negatives. So let's get this straight, Senator. Your wife campaigns for you, does public speeches, and says things like she's finally proud of her country and that America's a downright mean country in 2008, and she should be immune from criticism? And joining us tonight with reaction to this developing story, Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Karl, how should I interpret this?
Well, you know, look, I have a certain sympathy for where Senator Obama's coming from. He's right. Spouses are civilians, but if spouses get involved in the process and begin to make explicit political statements like the ones that you mentioned from Michelle Obama, they're intruding into the process. They can't say I'm a civilian and then become involved in the process by making policy statements. I mean, look, she said she wanted to rip Bill Clinton's eyes out at one point. You know, you mentioned the article where she, you know, our nation, our country is just downright mean. We're guided by fear. We're a nation of cynics, sloths, and complacents. We've become a nation of struggling folks who are barely making it every day. It's getting worse over my lifetime, and doggone it, I'm young. I mean, these are the kind of things that cross the line between the appropriate role for a spouse and an equally appropriate role for a spouse being a political actor in the stage. But if you decide to become a political actor, then the things that you say and you do become subject of public scrutiny and comment.
Yeah, and I don't want to be clear about this because there's a liberal talking point out there that she said, really proud of my country. She did say that one time, but another time she said, for the first time in my adult life, I'm proud, you know, of my country.
Right.
But
right.
I think once she's injected herself into the campaign, and if she thinks, and she wants to be First Lady, that America is a downright mean country, if he talks in front of his millionaire friends about bitter Americans clinging to guns and religion, I personally think that's fair game because they're going to represent all of us in the end. Isn't that right?
Right. Look, every presidential spouse is going to be subjected to scrutiny. I mean, look, Cindy McCain's, you know, her ownership of a beer distributor, you know, whether or not she paid the taxes on her elderly aunt's condo in California, what are her income taxes? These are all matters of public speculation. So is Michelle Obama's, you know, dissertation at Princeton and her job as a lobbyist for a hospital. That's always going to, the press is going to look into that.
Yeah.
But she did invite scrutiny of her views and values by injecting them into the campaign. I mean,
yeah.
I understand where he's coming from, and I'm very sympathetic to it. But the best answer for her, if he doesn't want her to be commented on, is to have her make comments that are not controversial in the way that these other comments have been.
I want to say he also said in this very same article, you know, the problem is rarely do these folks ever have the guts to say it to your face. Senator Obama is welcome on this program. I'll let him co-host my radio show for 3 hours. He can be here. I'll let him fill in for Alan one night for the full hour.
You get to say it then?
I get to say.
Oh, thank you.
I'll let him I'll even throw in Hannity's America for an hour. I am not ashamed of anything I've ever said. I think we've asked some very tough questions, but this is the most important job in the world. And it seems to me, and maybe this is unsolicited advice to Senator Obama, and that is, Senator Obama, you know, you singled me out, and I want to give you advice. It seems to me that if you want to be taken seriously, he needs to be acting like a statesman. He needs to be acting presidential. Do you agree with me?
Well, you make an interesting point, Sean. I think that he hyperventilated in this article. The best way to deal with this would be to be low-key about it, and the best way for the issue to go away is for her not to make additional comments. Look, if the last thing that she said were the things that she said in March and April and May, then by July and August and September, you know, the issue would be diminished and people would no longer be talking about it. But you know, this was hyperventilation. I mean, to suggest that she has the right to say these things and nobody has the right to be critical of her about it is, I think, a step too. We can have a legitimate disagreement about whether or not she meant what she said when she said it. But the point is that in order to stop the controversy, two things need to happen. She ought to not say additional things that are of that controversial nature, and he ought not to continue to pour gasoline on the fire so that we revisit this. If he had said to Glamour magazine, you know what, that's been asked and answered, you know, I didn't like it, I'm concerned about my spouse, blah 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 blah. This thing they would not have hyped this for an article that's going to appear in October. They'd not be hyping it in July. But the fact that he not only came back and said, you know, not only am I upset about it, but I'm now going to pick out some people and really take the wood to him, re-energizes the whole controversy. We wouldn't be talking about this if he had not
a lot of people.
Let me go back. I read the National Review article. It is a reasonable response to a series of statements. I mean, she gave a speech in February in which she told people, don't go into corporate America. Well, you know, she had good sentiments, which were, you ought to think about being a teacher, you ought to think about serving your community. She could have said those things without taking on people by saying, I'm going to diminish people who go into corporate America. And again, this is the point, is that she can say things in a way that is positive and optimistic, or she can say things in, you know, I'm proud of America. Or not, I'm proud of America for the first time in my adult life. To encourage people to become teachers and social workers, she doesn't say, don't go into corporate America.